But how will the rulings ultimately impact the case against George Zimmerman? Joining me now, Paul Callan, our CNN legal analyst and defense attorney, also Sonny Hostin, former federal prosecutor and our CNN legal analyst, and Mark NeJame is a criminal defense attorney for us in Florida, serving as a legal analyst here as we walk through this trial. So welcome to all of you. And Paul Callan, let me just begin with you, because these rulings would seem to hurt George Zimmerman's case when it comes to backing up his claims of self-defense. Do you agree with that?
No, I totally disagree. I've got to take a contrarian view on this. I think it was an enormous victory for the defense in court today, and I'll tell you why. And it was a strategic blunder by the prosecution. The prosecutor brought up the text messages by making what we call a motion in limine to prevent the defense from mentioning this stuff. And you know something? Under the rules of evidence, the defense would never have been allowed to bring any of this stuff up, because the rule in self-defense cases is the bad character, the alleged bad character of the victim is not admissible unless the defendant knew about it, because it's all about what you perceived when you fired the shots. If you don't even know the guy, his background isn't going to, influence your opinion to fire a shot. And here, Brooke, what happened was, as a result of this hearing, everybody in Seminole County knows that Trayvon Martin wears a gold tooth, uses drugs, is seen holding a gun, possibly, brags about fighting. The prosecutors have tarnished his entire reputation before they even start picking the jury.
Who else? Does anyone disagree with Paul? Paul, I hear you. Sonny or Mark, do you disagree with him?
Yeah, I certainly do.
Go ahead,
I disagree with him. I mean, I was in the courtroom today, and it seemed to me that when Mark O'Mara was arguing these motions, it was a foregone conclusion. He knew that this information wasn't coming in. But I will say this to Paul's point. It was masterful that the defense got this out there, because now the jury pool, the prospective jurors, do know a different side of Trayvon Martin. They've seen, I'm sure, many of these text messages. They've seen the photographs of Trayvon Martin holding a gun. And I think that could be helpful to the defense.
Mark, what do you make of the fact that this is pretty big today, the fact that the jury will not be able to see the crime scene? How does that play?
That didn't surprise me. Really, very few of these rulings surprised me. As was stated, most of this is known to be inadmissible. As it relates to the crime scene, I don't disagree with the judge's ruling on that. It's going to be very close to impossible to replicate the weather conditions, the time that this occurred, and all the relevant factors that would make it relevant for a jury to view this. So that didn't surprise me at all. You can replicate this pretty much with a video and matters such as that. I will say, though, that what this ruling has now allowed to have happen is it streamlined the case. The case basically is supposed to now be only about the facts that occurred at that fateful moment. Now, why is that important? Because I think forensics are going to dictate what occurs in this case. The enhancement of the tape, is it going to be clear as far as what was said, the closeness in range as it relates to the shot, the fatal shot, those are going to become relevant, and I think that the defense needed to make its record, but I think that they're planning and anticipating going forward on the forensics.
Now, Paul, the judge did agree to hold a hearing on whether the state failed to turn over some evidence, including photos of a firearm in someone's hand, as well as some deleted text messages. How could this help the defense?
Well, you know, in the end, I don't think they're going anyplace with that, because even if there was a ruling in favor of the defense, what would the punishment be? They're not going to dismiss the charges against George Zimmerman. The stuff has been turned over in advance of trial. So in the end, that plays not in a bad way for the defense or the prosecution. It'll mean nothing ultimately.
Sonny, what are you going to be looking for?
I don't necessarily. I'm sorry.
I mean, Brooke, I think Paul is right. If anything comes out of it, perhaps sanctions. And there was, a lot of discussion, of course, in the courtroom today about that. There was even a witness that came up and testified. Very, very dramatic, but ultimately the judge is going to deal with it on June 6th. And if anything comes out of it, I would suspect could be sanctions.
Mark, go ahead and jump in.
Well,
what were you going to say?
I think that there's going to be fireworks on June 6th over this issue. You're accusing a prosecutor of prosecutorial misconduct for hiding the ball, for hiding evidence in a murder case, in a homicide case. I do think, though, that ultimately at the end of the day, it will be much ado about nothing, but I think we're going to have an early 4th of July at that court hearing. And the reason is that the things that were supposedly held back, which came forward through an employee at the state attorney's office, as we understand it, I think that's very significant. If, in fact, they make a claim, they can prove that that wasn't turned over timely, then I think that will be the last vestige of hope that the defense has to say we need more time to get into what else might have been held back. I don't think the judge will grant it, but I think it will set a good record that if they were hiding the ball and it's proven that the state was holding back evidence, that will be a significant issue that could have a play in the event of a conviction.
Okay. Paul, final question to you. We know that the prosecutors requested multiple times this gag order, again denied. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, it does surprise me. There's so much publicity poisoning the jury well in this case that if I were the judge, I'd be very concerned, and I think I'd be inclined to impose a gag order. So I put that in victory for the defense category because they can continue to talk about Trayvon Martin's background. They can continue to say things that, in fact, may help their case ultimately. I'm a little surprised there's no gag order as we get this close to the trial.
Paul Callan, Sonny Hostin, Martin NeJame, thank you all so much. Appreciate it tonight.